Lieutenant General Kellogg. I mean, I don't think we should be taking any uh, directions from Russia on who we're going to send to this. He has extraordinarily long history and in national security. Obviously, a retired three-star, but also vice president's national security advisor in the first Trump administration. So he is incredibly knowledgeable. I think fully respected by the Ukrainians, which matters. And the fact that he might be a bit pro-Ukrainian, okay,
I
so
mean,
what?
what? Yeah, exactly. How is that a
So
big
what?
deal? Right.
Yeah, I mean, you remember at one time the national security advisor, our national security advisor, was his biggest criticism is we weren't giving Ukraine enough fast enough,
Yeah.
right? So I think the history of most of our people in national security and Rubio as well, Secretary Rubio, they're all pro-Ukrainian. I mean, it's our partner, So
Hmm.
and as soon as we start bowing to their demands, then all they're going to do is make demands.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's we should just not even acknowledge it. It's like, yeah, we're going to send our team. This is our team. We didn't tell you who to send.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Eyes On. Mick Mulroy, of course, myself, Dimitri. Thank God Mick's here because I couldn't do this by myself. Andy Milburn, Jason Lyons they're here. We love them and we miss them. Lot cooking today. Over the last, week or so, there's been quite a bunch of news. First and foremost, what's going on with Ukraine? The U.S. and Ukrainians met in Saudi Arabia a few days ago, came up with a ceasefire plan for 30 days, and it seems like the Russians have rejected it and kind of slipped in their own ceasefire deal, or what looks like a ceasefire deal. Not exactly something that is shocking to most people that they wouldn't go for it. Mick, what are you thinking? Also, a big point in that was Kellogg got kind of put on the back burner, I guess. Russians didn't like him being involved. So just that was just my little.
Yes. Yeah, I'll have to discuss there, Dave, but I'll start with happy almost St. Patrick's Day uh, to America and Irish around the world, obviously. But had to point that out. I have my contribution to the
Ready to
party I'm
go.
going to. Green spot. No, I don't have any investments in this, but I recommend it. You haven't had a green spot. And fun fact for in honor of our national security bend of our podcast in the Irish. Irish are about 9% of the U.S. population. Irish Americans, that is. What percentage do you think of Medal of Honors, D, were awarded to Irish Americans?
I'm gonna say
Nine
it.
9%. Remember, they're only 9% of the population.
I'm gonna say 40%.
58%,
Oh wow.
almost 60%. And I think if they updated it, I think it would be over 60%. You guys can check me out, but that's your Irish propaganda for today. I got a lot of it. So to your question on Ukraine, obviously several big things. I think it's important to point out. It's good that we are now what appears to be on the same sheet with Ukraine. Need to recognize that it was a little messy getting there, but it is what it is. And this is a U.S. proposed ceasefire. So I think that is what we need the U.S. to focus on, is that now this is the U.S. wanting a ceasefire. And there has to be not just, um, you know, everybody has to compromise, I suppose, in any negotiation, but there needs to be consequences to Russia if they don't agree to the ceasefire. And there's reports now, and although it's not like it's a secret, but that there's an FSB report apparently that's been reported that their plan is to essentially continue to fight, make completely unrealistic requests of the ceasefire, and basically play us. Uh, they think they're, in the Kursk region, they're taking back territory. Apparently, they're mobilizing to go in the Sumy region of Ukraine. They think that they're partly because of the disruption in aid and intelligence, but partly just because this is a war of attrition, and Russia has 4 times the amount of troops that Ukraine has. So the longer this goes on, the more territory they'll take. And I think that's a big concern, is that they don't see any value from a military perspective of a ceasefire right now, because they believe they're on the front foot. So I think the way the U.S. and Europe, as supporters of Ukraine, should start looking is, what can we do to make that turn, right? To give Ukraine an advantage, they can start potentially taking territory back from Russia, or hold territory they currently have. And that rhymes with increased security assistance, right?
Yeah.
That's what they need to do.
Yeah.
And we need to do. And we don't have to have a press conference about it. We don't have to, leak our deliberations on it. We just need to do it, I think. And that is what Russia will understand, that we're doing that. And so not just turn back on what we had, but actually increase it. And potentially, if that doesn't work, to get them into the ceasefire negotiations, then the releasing of Russian assets that are frozen in Europe, 325 billion is my understanding. That's another point. Moving, I mean, obviously Europe has been awoken, which is a good thing. And I think President Trump would take some credit for that. They are building out their military. They're spending more on their own national defense than they have potentially some of these countries ever. So that's going to keep increasing, which Russia doesn't want to see. And that's too bad. They shouldn't be invading countries in Europe. They didn't want to see that. So I think that's what the U.S. needs to do to really leverage and then sanctions, of course. Sanctions can be increased, if we're talking
Yeah.
some economic stuff. And you know what? And when Russia says we don't like European forces to be there after a ceasefire, we need to hold the line on that, because that's the security guarantee
Sure.
for Ukraine, right? That's it. If not, then if Russia doesn't want them there, then that's basically telegraphing to us that they intend to yet again break the ceasefire,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's why they don't want them there. Because why would it matter if their fighting was stopped? So in Europe doesn't need to have permission from Russia to send European forces to European countries. So I think we need to hold the line on that. The last part that to your question, the send to this, he has extraordinarily long history and in national security. Obviously, a retired 3-star, but also vice president's national security advisor in the first Trump administration. So he is incredibly knowledgeable. I think fully respected by the Ukrainians, which matters. And the fact that he might be a bit pro-Ukrainian, okay,
I
so
mean,
what?
yeah, exactly. How is that a
So
big deal? Right.
yeah, I mean, you remember at one time the national security advisor, our national security advisor, was his biggest criticism is we weren't giving Ukraine enough fast enough,
Yeah.
right? So I think the history of most of our people in national security, and Rubio as well, Secretary Rubio, they're all pro-Ukrainian. I mean, it's our partner, So and as soon as we start bowing to their demands, then all they're going to do is make demands.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. It's we should just not even acknowledge it. It's like, yeah, we're going to send our team. This is our team. We didn't tell you who to send, and it's just
Exactly.
we're past it. And yes, Europe is going to send in peacekeepers. If you're not for that, that just tells us you're essentially already planning to violate the whatever agreement we could get to.
Yeah, it was interesting. I saw one of the clips from like the Russian state TV or whatever, where it's like their nightly show where they're like, hardcore propagandists. And they're like, this is a mistake because Europe's arming up, right? Like Europe's gonna start stepping up on their own. Poland is not, I feel like it's not to be fucked with. Like they're down to bump their military spending, maybe go nuclear, right, or at least kick the tires on that. Which I can't
Mhm.
say I blame them really. If I'm Poland, like, what's the one thing that'll keep people off your back, and that's unfortunately nuclear weapons, right? Like that'll
Yep.
completely more than likely avoid an invasion. Um,
Well, if they don't consider the U.S. to be a secure ally in NATO, I mean, I don't know how many nukes you need, but they
Sure.
are vastly outnumbered by the Soviets, like 5,000 to 500.
Yeah.
And only two countries, in my knowledge, are in the without the U.S. have nuclear weapons, UK and France.
Yeah.
So France is talking about expanding their umbrella and potentially putting. I think Poland, to your point, they requested nukes in their territory. But they're also probably going to, in Germany, I mean,
Yeah.
there's going to be countries that acquire their own, and there might be a nuclear arms race here. I mean, they might want to be on par with the Russian threat. So because
Yeah.
they don't feel, for whatever reason, don't feel they can rely on us. So that means they're going to literally 5,000 additional nuclear weapons just
I
to
mean,
keep
listen,
up.
if you're Germany or Poland, right? Like, sure, it'd be great if France extended out the nuclear umbrella, maybe place some nukes in their country, but who's got command and control of those, right? So if I'm a country like Poland, it's more like if I want to completely guarantee my security, it's like I want my own arsenal, even if it's
Yeah.
a deterring one, whatever, a couple hundred, 150 nukes or whatever it is, you know.
Yep.
Um, yeah,
And
and
it
I
won't be difficult for these countries to develop it. I mean,
sure,
these are some of the most technologically sophisticated
right,
countries on the planet. It wasn't a lack of either funds or knowledge. It was just a belief that, collectively,
yeah,
especially with the US, we had them covered when it came to nuclear weapons. And that's just they don't believe that anymore. And it's not just nukes. They're talking, I mean, Poland's doubling the size of their military, doubling.
yeah,
Germany's spending, I think it was 500 billion next year. They're completely revamping their military industrial base. They don't want to be relying on the U.S. anymore. So
sure.
you can see every day there's another cancellation of F-35s
I
by
saw
European
that.
countries.
I
It's going to
think
have a big
Was it
effect.
Portugal that canceled one?
Portugal and Canada, well, not a
Like,
European country, but
yeah,
Canada just canceled their F-35. So it's going to have a pretty big consequences to we promote U.S. Defense industry around the world. The U.S. government,
yeah,
partly because it's U.S. jobs, but also because it's in our own interest,
sure,
national security interest, to have our partners compatible with us using our equipment, right?
right.
But for reasons both because of their concern about our um, alliance with NATO but also some of the things they saw happening in Ukraine when they started shutting down stuff. That's going to have a big effect on the future of U.S. Dominance in this area.
One more thing about that. I've seen a couple places over the last week or so where the reason why the US is pulling away from Europe and and Ukraine specifically and NATO is because they're doing a hard pivot to the Pacific, to China. And I'm kind of having a hard time really like squaring that circle a little bit because like there's no way we're not able to do both, right?
Yeah,
Where our main focus obviously is going to be on China. They're the next, strongest economy and military, um, and a Taiwan issue, but we can't do both. I mean,
exactly. That's like the biggest false argument in DC. It's always like an either or, right? Like we can't. There's a raging war in the Middle East. There's a raging war in Europe, and we're going to say that we're only going to focus on the Indo-Pacific. I mean, that would be, uh, you know, not in our interest, to put it politely. And the more we show a weakness when it comes to NATO, which is, I mean, there's certainly some complaints with our partners in the
for sure.
past, but it is the best military alliance in history. I mean, it won the Cold War, and it actually activated to help us after 9/11. If we show a weakness in that, what do you think China's going to think?
Yeah,
What about our partners in the Indo-Pacific? We have treaty allies out there, Japan, for example, South Korea, I think the Philippines. It sends the wrong message. I mean, a strong NATO, especially at the end of this, is going to be even stronger,
sure.
right? Because we have energized the Europeans, and I do think that's a good thing. That would make it less likely, in my opinion, that China would look to do
Sure.
anything toward Taiwan, whether it was a blockade or an actual invasion.
Hey guys, it's Jack. I just want to talk to you for a moment about how you can support the show if you've been watching it, enjoying it, but you'd like to get a little bit more involved and help us continue to do this. You can check out our Patreon. It is patreon.com/theteamhouse. And for $5 a month, you can get access to all of these episodes of The Team House ad-free. The same goes with our affiliated podcast, Eyes On, with Andy Milburn, Jason Lyons, Mick Mulroy. That one, you will also get all of those episodes ad-free. And you support the channel and the show, and we really appreciate it. The Patreon members are literally what has helped this company, this small business survive, especially during our early years. And you are what continues to help this thing going, even as we navigate the turbulent world of YouTube advertising. So we really appreciate all of you guys. There's going to be a link down in the description to that Patreon page, and there is also going to be a link to our new merch shop. So if you guys want to go and get some Team House merchandise, we got stickers, and we also have patches. And I should mention, if you sign up for Patreon at $10 a month, we will mail you this patch as well. So we really appreciate that. But they're also for sale on the merch shop. And additionally, they got t-shirts up there, water bottles, a tote bag, coffee mugs, all that good stuff. So please go and check them out and support the show. We really appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you. And like, if we show that we're like staunch allies with our actual allies and we're willing to like invest and whether it's tech or anything else, and everything from intelligence to hardware, yeah, China's going to balk at a full-scale invasion of Taiwan. It just is. Like right now, they see what's going on. If I'm China, I'm like, maybe we can get it going by 2027. Because I have a feeling that the U.S. won't respond. And if they do, it might be economically, but it won't be kinetically.
Right. And we haven't been clear. I mean, there's this thing called strategic ambiguity when it comes
Sure.
to Taiwan. We don't really tell them what we're going to do. We have a law that requires us to support them, but not direct military. Um, I think you could make the argument we should be strategically clear and say we are going to support them. Why not? We can still make the decision at the time, right?
Yeah.
And it will be a difficult decision to try to convince Americans that, that we're going to go to war with China to save Taiwan. I think that would be
Tough.
But yeah, but one of the ways to prevent it from even being an issue for us to have to decide is to show great strength in NATO and to
Yeah.
build up our partnerships and alliances to have some version of an Indo-Pacific NATO.
Yeah.
Right. I think we could do that, and it would be to our benefit because oftentimes military alliances lead to trade and economic benefits. I mean, it's tied completely, which is another reason why we got, I guess, be a little concerned about who we're picking fights with economically.
Sure. Also, another bit I saw about like kind of like our allies moving away from American hardware. I mean, this has been a long back and forth with Turkey. Like Turkey was going to get the F-35, but they bought the S-400, and we kicked them. We stopped that purchase. But Turkey hit up the UK Ministry of Defense about purchasing 40 Eurofighters, Typhoons. So also I understand why they're a little apprehensive. The rest of Europe, like there was talk about a F-35 kill switch and stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, to make sure we're secure, we need to we need to be able to trust our allies, historical allies, right? 80, 90-year allies. It just, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's just something they have to consider. We certainly would. I
of
mean,
course.
allies switch too. I mean, one of our closest allies now is Japan, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you don't know. I mean, I would hope that we maintain our allies and they don't become adversaries. But from any country's perspective, you want to have ultimate control of your strategic weapon systems
Hmm.
and all your weapon systems, but certainly the big ones.
For sure. I'm trying anything else on this Ukraine ceasefire and what happens next? Maybe a little bit of like some speculation at least.
Well, I think the way to force Russia to really come to the table and into an agreement is to make it in their advantage, for their advantage, right? In the sense that we have to start taking stronger measures. We have to start giving Ukraine, as many said in the last administration, the ability to win, not just survive.
Yeah.
And that means leaving the restrictions or cutting the restrictions on our weapon systems and how far they can fight into or be used into Russia, and just start giving them more material, period. That's, again, you don't have to rub it in anybody's face. It doesn't service a purpose to do that. Just do it. And then, as they start realizing they're not going to win, it comes to a complete standstill, then they'll come to the table. And then when they do, we need to just ignore the ridiculous, over the top, because that's how everything is maximized on theirs. They'll ask for maximum amounts of concessions, and they'll try to turn us against each other. So we just need to know that's the playbook and just not fall into it.
They've been doing a decent job of it. I'm not going to lie to you over the last month or so.
Yeah. They think right now everything's going in their direction, which
Yeah.
I don't think they're ready to come to the table.
Also, does Russia really think that Ukraine, even if they did collapse and they were able to take up more and more territory, that like the Ukrainian people, that wouldn't be like the craziest insurgency in the like ever?
And that last part again, it cut off for a second.
So if like let's say US backed up and Russia really made some huge gains where they were able to maybe even get to Kyiv again, right?
Yeah.
It's like the early days in the war. You don't like they're not thinking of like the insane insurgency that would happen afterwards and what that would be like to be fighting street to street urban warfare.
Yeah, sorry,
Don't
they're
worry.
coming to clean my room.
No worries.
So, yeah, I mean, the idea, I mean, let's look how tenacious the Ukrainians have been so far, right? So most analysts like myself, they're like 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 days, on February 22nd when they crossed the line. Now we're over 3 years. We're in our fourth year.
Yeah.
And they've taken 20% of the terrain, and now they're trying to take back terrain that the Ukrainians actually took in Russia. So let's not be so quick to lose faith. Not that you are, but and what the Ukrainians can do. They've proven they can fight.
Yeah.
This is a David Goliath type scenario, literally. And the idea that you could have a long-term occupation of Ukraine without like the worst, to your point, insurgency ever. They got to realize that that's just not going to happen. And there could be a point where Europeans actually go in without a ceasefire. I mean, that's a plausible scenario, right?
Yeah.
And just say, okay, well, we're going to man the line here and you're not going any further. And if you do, you're going to be fighting, European forces that are in NATO. And I mean, whether that be a NATO Article 5 situation, I don't know, but it certainly would change the discussion from the Russian perspective.
Yeah. Gosh. Man. All right, swinging over, segueing to another sunny part of the world, Gaza, and the extension of phase one. U.S. Israeli citizen is being released, and I think they're also releasing a couple of bodies as well. And the other big one that like stood out for sure was like there was talk of like relocating Palestinians in African countries. I think Somalia being one, Sudan another one. Where places where like I don't know if the influx of refugees is exactly the best thing for countries like that right now.
Yeah.
What are you tracking with that?
So the extension of the first phase seems to be continuing, at least as far as the pause in the fighting. But there does seem to be not all the parts, right? So the other parts to the first phase was increased humanitarian assistance, which has now been essentially cut off to a population that, we do some humanitarian work there, so we tend to know the statistics, but it's essentially 100%. It's like 97% of all Palestinians are, at risk of starvation. Right. So if you cut off the supplies, eventually the stockpiles, to the extent there was much, are going to run out. And they cut off electricity to most of Gaza, which not only, of course, affects the ability of hospitals to be hospitals, but also essentially to make clean water. Because you need power for the desalination plants. So they're down to no food coming in and not being able to make clean water, which is super critical to any population. So I think the request on the part of the Israelis right now is, and there's a lot of legalities with cutting off humanitarian assistance to a civilian population. So you can't use that as a means of warfare, so to speak, or exactly that. So if they can extend it where the hostages are still coming out, for the exchange of Palestinians and humanitarian assistance, is better for everybody.
Sure.
So hopefully Hamas does that. They claim to care about the Palestinian people in Gaza. I think there's little evidence to support that they do, but this would be like the basic level, right? Do you want to keep releasing hostages for Palestinian prisoners to be released and for humanitarian assistance to go back to high levels? I think that this should happen. And your other point, yes, there's reports that the U.S. has gone to, I think it was Somalia, Sudan, and Somaliland, which is part of Somalia, but would like to be its own country, and asked about whether they would take Palestinians. I still think it seems to be completely impractical. I mean, how do you forcibly relocate 2 million people that don't want to? Of course, many of them are armed. I mean, think about how difficult of a military problem that would be. And it would be obviously extraordinarily bloody. And of course, the legalities of forcibly relocating a population from their homeland and forcing them into a country, even if one of those countries agreed. Like we already know Egypt and Jordan said, no how, no way, it's not going to happen. I don't know, obviously, that at least from the reports I read, it didn't say anything about, whether they replied positively to that. But if they did, to your other point, D, I mean, somebody would have to pay for all this. I mean, these are countries that, like Sudan's, actually, if there's one place worse than Sudan, I mean, than Gaza right now when it comes to humanitarian crisis, it's Sudan. Right. So taking 2 million people into a country that's having because we work there as well, a very difficult time feeding its own population would be, I don't know how that would work, but I guess somebody would have to pay the bill, I suppose. In Somalia, they're expecting a drought. Just met with the Somalis the other day about the stuff we do, and they're expecting a pretty substantial drought with 6 million people would be at risk of food insecurity. So these are two countries that, not only couldn't just absorb it, they can't necessarily deal with their own.
Mick, I got a question, right? Because you've been in these rooms where strategy is talked about. This idea of like forcibly moving 2 million people to another country. Are they just sitting in a room with a whiteboard and they're like, guys, give me any ideas, and let's put it out there and try it? Because that's fucking insane.
Yeah. So that's, when the policy process, which I don't know if I assume it's still being the same. You have like the deputies, which is
right.
I mean, you have different levels, put it that way. The PCB, the policy coordination.
But it starts at a lower level where people get cooking and they talk about things and like recommend it to the next level. I can't see this being vetted months and months where they're like, you know what, this is a good idea. Let's kick it up to the deputy assistant and the assistant, then the whatever. You know what I mean? Like and then we'll be in the NSC with the principals all talking about it. Like I cannot imagine that's how it went down.
Right. But just, it's called the PCC, I think, the Policy Coordination Committee. And I was on that for the Pentagon. Right. And so the reason why I bring it up is that if everybody agrees on that, it doesn't necessarily have to go up, it doesn't have to go to the deputies or the principals or the full NSC if everybody agrees.
Yeah.
And obviously, most cases you've already coordinated with your particular secretary, so you're not just freewheeling it. But from the DoD perspective, we are always usually with our uniformed counterpart at the Joint Staff, right? So why now they don't propose policy, but they are there to keep people in the realm of reality,
Sure. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like somebody comes up with a great idea to move 2 million people that don't want to be moved, then the military is going to be asked, like, tell us how this would happen, if it could happen, what would be the concerns we'd have, and etc. The agency, the CIA, also plays a similar role in that they're there to provide input on the soundness of a policy direction, not to say whether we should do it, but just the consequences, pros and cons, if you will, of doing it or not doing it. So that there is healthy doses of reality, even to people who might, not know, what they're asking for. They get that injection and that's one of the key reasons we have uniform military and the intelligence services in these policy committee meetings, because and the intel community obviously sets the facts. So we're all supposed to be operating on the same facts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank God somebody leaked it, I guess, to show everybody how stupid it is of an idea to even like bring up in any kind of meeting. And at least it got to like the news. Kind of dovetailing a little bit towards what's happening a little bit here at home in terms of like the revocation of visas for some of the protest students that are protesting in Columbia and different universities. The kid, his name was Khalil. What was it? I don't remember his last name. Sorry. He got arrested, sent to an ICE detention center in Louisiana. As far as I know, they were trying to charge him with stuff in Louisiana rather than in New York, where Columbia University is and where he was detained. His attorneys, it's a shit show. The guy's he has a green card. He's a permanent resident. He has a wife that, or a girlfriend or fiance that's 8 months pregnant, who is a citizen. And in America, you should be able to fucking protest something you don't like. That's where I stand. I mean, I don't know what you're thinking, Mick.
So
Protest non-violently, not violently.
yeah, right. Yeah. So my understanding is that every person in the country, not just citizens, have rights under the First Amendment. I think it's the Bridges case. Long time ago, I was actually a lawyer, so not that gives me any special. I usually don't tell people that because then I just get lawyer jokes. But I believe that is the case. Now, there's certain exceptions. There's certain exceptions even for citizens, right? You can't promote violence.
Yeah.
Like, it's speech, but it ain't free, right? You can't sit there and say you could try to tell people they should go and
run into a theater, yell fire, that kind of thing.
There's plenty of exceptions. Well, not plenty, but there is exceptions. And I think inside the immigration laws that cover this, what the administration's saying is that if it harms U.S. foreign relations, that you can revoke a visa. So, and I don't know what this young man did. So I'm not like, if he is just against the Israeli operation in Gaza, then obviously any American should be able to be for it or against it.
Sure.
And it shouldn't just, if not, then even with people that are here on visas, you have to agree with the current administration, right?
Sure.
If not, you could, under that theory, you could just be launched. The question is whether he was promoting Hamas. Hamas is a U.S., EU, UN designated terrorist organization who proved that it is in spades on October 7th. So I don't know. Was he promoting Hamas, which to me would be promoting, obviously, a terrorist organization by the facts, or was he just in disagreement with the U.S. policy on, the two-state solution, et cetera? If it's promoting Hamas, then I could see, depending to what level, anybody, not being able to do that, but certainly somebody who's a visitor. If it's just a political question, then we're going down a, as they say in the law, a slippery slope.
Yeah.
You disagree with me, so I'm going to boot you out of the country.
Sure.
That's going to be highly subjective if that's allowed, and it's not actual promotion of a terrorist ideology.
Yeah. It's a good question. I mean, what constitutes promotion of a terrorist organization, right? Like he's not, I mean, if he's raising money and sending it to Hamas, things of that nature, like I understand why, like you can't fucking do that, and there should be consequences to that. I mean, if he's organizing a anti-Israel protest in Columbia University, I think he's one of the organizers of it, right?
Right.
And whatever their chance might be, outside of death to America or death to Israel, if it's like a lawful protest,
Yeah.
I'm
And
really
part
having
of
a
it is-
hard time wrapping my mind around like being able to snatch him and toss him, even if he's not an actual U.S. citizen, a permanent resident with a green card.
Right. And there is a provision that allows the Secretary of State to do that. So I guess the legality might be there, but the question is we start down that road, then it's going to literally, people that are in our country at our permission are now expected to be, everything they say has to be consistent with the current administration. I mean,
Right.
that's not American, right? I
No,
mean, we all, but the question is, was he actually? And I don't know that he was. I must
neither
say,
do I. I don't know either.
part of it, and I think, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day. Um, uh, it was perfectly bad timing, right? What am I going to do? She's a super nice lady. Yeah, I'm at home.
She was good though. She was quiet. She didn't.
I'm
Yeah.
at the JW Marriott. You can maybe, if I get out of the way, you can see the
Yeah, it's coming. Yeah.
Usher Monty. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is. It's a little cloudy here, Lucy. Yeah, it's tough. I guess they need to really show what he did or did not do and what he said or did not say. I think one of the things that has really concerned people who've seen these protests, I mean, we have a long history of college protests, which is, I think, a good thing. But some of them really don't know what the hell they're talking about.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
when you've got people like saying, LG, lesbians for Hamas, it's like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of that organization is completely against any form of individual human rights on any level,
Right.
whether it's First Amendment, freedom of religion, women's rights, obviously gay rights. I mean, you couldn't get a group that's probably further from supporting Western,
Sure.
ideas of individual liberties than Hamas.
Hmm.
Right. So it's part of it. You can always disagree. I mean, you always have that between younger people and older people, but some of it's like, come on. I mean, if you're gonna spend this much time and dedicate your life to something, you gotta really find out what you're talking about,
Sure.
because that's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to see people say stuff like that,
Yeah.
because they obviously have done no research on that topic. If that's
And just think about it. Hey, if you're a gay person or, anything, and you go to Gaza, you think they're going to, you think you could find like the gay pride parade where they do that? No. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't exist there.
it doesn't
Right.
in Tel Aviv, though, just so you know.
Yeah.
It does in Tel Aviv, right? So, but that's a whole different issue. But I
Sure.
think, to your point, D, is it really depends on what this young person did or didn't do.
Yeah.
If it's just purely disagreeing with U.S. foreign policy, which clearly U.S. Americans disagree all the
Sure.
time
Yeah.
with each other, I would hope that would not fall into the category that somebody could be forced out
Yeah.
of the country.
Yeah. Like you called it, it's a slippery slope. I mean, if he's like a facilitator to that level, I get it, right? I get it. You cannot be screwing around like that. But if you're just some intellectual who's, organizing a protest and there happens to be a girl like a lesbians for Hamas or whatever their slogans might be, yeah, I can't. There's like degrees to it, right? It's a spectrum of like,
Yeah.
are you or aren't you?
And there's also the harassment part of this Jewish students, right?
Yeah,
Jewish students should feel like they're under threat in their own
for
college or
sure.
anywhere in the U.S., right? And that was and I don't know if this person did any of that, but that's another reason why I think these colleges and universities are under so much criticism is they're basically allowing the speech they agree with to a certain
Sure.
extent.
Right.
You know, you and I can understand why you wouldn't, but you set a neo-Nazi on Columbia University and see how long they last
Yeah.
and their protests and see how long they and obviously not promoting neo-Nazis,
Of
but
course. Yeah.
if you're totally cool with vandalism and taking over buildings and all that, um, with speech and activity you agree with, it should be content neutral for them too.
Right.
If it's not, then they're just actively promoting one particular side. And if they want to do that, then they'll have the consequences. It's like they can see right now.
Hmm.
Huge amounts of federal funding is getting cut off to a lot of these
I
universities.
saw that as well. Yeah. Um, yeah. So it's something to keep an eye on, for sure, for a multitude of reasons. Last bit was we smoked an ISIS, Amir, top guy in
Uh,
ISIS, it seems like, and this name will elude me till the end of time. Um,
Khadijah, Abu Khadijah is his terrorist name.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like CENTCOM released the footage of it. He was driving along in a car and he got smoked by I don't know what, a couple hellfires maybe.
Yeah. And so a couple points on him. He was essentially in charge of ISIS in Iraq and Syria and the deputy overall worldwide. Right. So big success.
Yeah.
According to reports, it was done through working with Iraqi intelligence, obviously our intelligence, CIA, and our Kurdish partners, and the U.S. military is the one that brought the hammer. So hats off to all of them. And they were apparently wearing suicide vests
Oh shit.
when they got them. Yeah, so they probably had that. Some of them do that because they know that one day there could be, their door could fly off the hinges, and some U.S. soldiers could be storming in there. So sometimes they wear those constantly. Hey, good work. I think the big thing to take away from that is ISIS is going to keep going. We can't just unilaterally declare victory of the global war on terrorism. That's not how it works. It's going to keep going. It's more like the fight against crime. You never see cops like sitting around going, "Oh, crime's over,"
So we're
right? Well,
good. Yeah.
terrorism's yeah. You just got to accept it. Terrorism's not. It's going to ebb and flow, but it's going to stay as long as the conditions that make it so are the case. And we have to be ready to keep fighting the fight. And I think the Trump administration, things they did since coming into office, they've powered down the decision to take these strikes. I think that's a good idea.
And they've given it to commanders in the field, right?
Yeah. So there's 4-star command, general officers, whether
Okay.
admirals or generals, that are combatant commanders, right? So General Kurilla is the CENTCOM commander. I think we should be fully confident in him and every other combatant commander's ability to make an assessment based on the policy they've been told by the president and the Secretary of Defense.
Yeah.
Right. I think we should trust them to do that, and hopefully that same case is also for CI strikes. Um, these are they're not a magic bullet, right? So they're not going to end the war on terrorism. But if there's an imminent threat, the answer is either we send in, either military forces, JSOC, or my old unit, which puts a lot of people at risk, or we take them out with a munition that is specifically designed to kill the intended target and nobody around them. We've actually done a great job, I think, getting to a point where we can do that. And I'm gonna go with the don't want to risk the force if I don't have to.
Sure.
And if you could take these guys off the battle space, and we could do it quicker if the combatant commander or their equivalent at the CIA is making that determination, then I'm for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't see how anybody would be against it, to be frank. Even my, pinko commie ass is for it too. You know what I mean? Smoke as many ISIS guys as you can get your hands on. Um, on a scale of 1 to 10, how amazing of allies and partner force are the Kurds? I know you hate these
Oh
questions,
yeah.
but 1 to 10.
1 to 10. I spent a lot of time with the Kurdish forces, the Peshmerga in Iraq. Yeah, I was on a team that went in way before the war started and helped organize the Peshmerga, which became essentially the Northern Front. Right, the idea
Yeah.
was we're going to have whole U.S. division there. Turkey wouldn't allow it, so it was basically just a handful of um, CI folks like myself and Army Special Forces, particularly 10th Group. Shout out to retired Lieutenant Colonel Ken Tovo, who was Lieutenant Colonel at the time. He's now a Lieutenant General, retired. Um, and all the Kurds. And I got to
Yeah.
tell you, they fought like freaking warriors, and that's why the U.S. military and CIA is so fond of the Kurds. Quite frankly, they're a partner you can trust 100%. And they were the Northern Front, which essentially kept about 13 Iraqi, Sudan, Republican Guard divisions pinned to the north
Wow.
to not, fight the U.S. Army and U.S. Marine Corps coming from the south.
Wow.
Thank you, Kurds. And they were outnumbered and essentially didn't have anything near the level of modern military equipment as the Republican Guards. But not only held them up there, but pushed all the way to Baghdad. Um, so I'm a big fan of the Peshmerga. Obviously, have a lot of connections with the Kurds and the SDF. So I think the SDF, particularly with the U.S. military and CIA in Syria, I mean they won, they defeated ISIS, right?
Yeah.
Without them, and they're not all Kurds. That's somewhat of a misnomer. The leadership is primarily Kurdish, the YPG, and they have a lot of Arab soldiers as well. But that's one of the best programs we've run with partners. Period. I mean, we've basically put very few Americans on the ground, predominantly JSOC, the Army component, and the CIA, um, and they did 99% of the fighting,
Yeah.
and were highly effective. And yes, it's caused issues with our relationship with Turkey, but I think if you talk to most military, U.S. military and CIA folks, they have the same opinion that I do when it comes to their quality of a partner, their ability and willingness to fight with us, alongside us, uh, and for a very common cause. They are pretty, you know, all things considered for the region, aligned,
Yeah.
with the right human rights and.
They're secular, they're moderate. Yeah.
Yep. Yep, they accept other religions. Women have significant roles in their government and in their military.
Yeah,
I
the
mean, they're known.
YPJ.
Yeah, they've got some really good soldiers, female soldiers, and I think there's several books written about it. So we need to maintain our partnership with them for our own interest, and over time, it benefits both us and them. And I think that's what any partnership, whether it's strategic global nation states to entities like the SDF, or just personal relationships, partnerships are as good as you are both willing to put in the effort.
Taking that as like a 9.6 out of 10, I'll say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. I don't know better partners. So, I
Right.
mean, if you said, well, who's better? I mean, I don't, yeah, again, I'm biased, but
Sure, sure.
I've fought alongside many a Peshmerga, and I can definitely attribute them to saving my ass many times. So
I mean, who's the other partner for us really, right? Like the ANA or the AMP?
yeah, we had a great partner force. In yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So there is an issue right now the for those that aren't tracking, and I imagine most of our audience does, but when we withdrew, there's this program called the Special Immigrant Visa. So people who work really closely with the U.S. could come to the United States on this special visa exemption, and eventually become citizens because they've proven their loyalty to the United States. And of course, we turned the damn country over to the Taliban, which is our arch enemy that wants to kill them all.
Right.
Right. So they are not all here, and I don't want to give the wrong numbers, but I was looking it up because I was talking to people about it last week on the Hill here. There's a lot, tens of thousands that are still in the process of doing that, and there's some talk about some new immigration restrictions would cut that off.
Right.
And I think this shouldn't be a political issue, and it ain't for me because I stay out of that stuff. But I would hope that, particularly the vets that have been involved in this, do let their representatives know that you expect uh, the United States to honor their pledge to our partners that fought alongside us in Afghanistan, and that any restrictions to stop them from being given what they were promised should be not happen. Period.
Sure.
And hopefully that's going to be heard before if it's actually going to happen.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, these people more than risked their lives. A lot of them lost their lives doing this, working with us in Afghanistan. And they're still there, probably under threat every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I hope they're allowed to come here. I hope it's expedited and there's no roadblocks put up moving forward.
Absolutely.
That's all I got. You got anything else that you want to?
Oh, I think we covered a lot today.
Yeah. Of course, there'll be more as we go along. Mick, Fogbow. Tell everybody what you do at Fogbow. Explain it to people.
So we do. We're basically a group that enables humanitarian operations. A lot of us are vets, so we take our skills that we learned in the past life, and obviously the mission is different now. The mission's delivering food, for example, to people who are in critical need, and it might be by maritime, might be by air, might be by ground. But that's what we do. And we've been in Gaza, we've been in Sudan, we're looking at expanding to Somalia, potentially Syria. That's what we do.
Yes, you could check them out. Fogbow. The link will be in the description. Is it fogbow.com?
Yeah, the website.
I have the link in the description. Check them out, see what they do. Of course, Lobo Institute as well. Really cool stuff. That link is in the description too. And if you want to read any of Mick's publications, that link is also in the description. To find him on social media as well, all the links will be in the description as well, please.
So one thing that I forgot. So we also run an NGO called End Child Soldiering. I should probably bring that up every week. It is an NGO that supports both requiring that countries don't use children to fight their wars, but also the rehabilitation of children that were forced to fight. It comes based on a documentary we did on a child soldier that got made into a best-selling book called All the Glimmering Stars. And part of the proceeds of the book goes to support our NGO. And we just issued the third OPOCA award. OPOCA is the last name of the man and woman, husband, wife, we did a documentary on, both child soldiers, to the Dallaire Institute. The Dallaire Institute is a group that have been doing great work. If you remember the movie or book Hotel Rwanda, the Canadian UN general that was in the movie is Romeo Dallaire, and he started this organization, and they, I think, are one of the most active out there, really doing good work to prevent children from being used as soldiers and to help those that were. And so the third OPOCA award that we've issued from In Child Soldiering is going to the Dallaire Institute. They're great work.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna also I'll put some links in the description for that as well. So check them out all down there if you want to find out more. Guys, I want you to understand something about Mick. He could literally be making 3 or 4 times more money doing almost anything else, and he's doing the right thing. So that's a little bit about Mick. Just FYI.
I'm doing all right. You do good. I'm doing all right.
All the other links are in the description as well for Andy and Jason. Check them out. Buy some merch if you want. Patches.
Find an Irish pub on Monday.
Yeah,
That's
have
my only
a pint.
request. Have a pint. Everybody's Irish on Monday.
Patreon.com/
whether you like it or not.
Yeah, you're just forced to. There's no negotiation there.
I don't want to be Irish.
Thanks, Mick. This was great.
All right, bro.
See you guys next time. Thank you.
See you next time.